Welcome to the Sisterhood of Sweat. Today's guest is Diane Lane. Therapist, educator, and life coach, Diane Lane has dedicated her career to helping people turn their lives around and is now on a mission to help them develop a sustainable, positive attitude that can actually turn one into an optimist, literally. A therapist and educator coach of positive psychology, she has seen that it can provide a strong foundation for finding great happiness and is gratified that it is becoming a mainstream method of treatment. A parent herself, Lang has taught positive parenting to parents and written extensively on the benefits of using it, even with the youngest of children. She has also spoken on or conducted seminars on postpartum depression, striving for balance versus having it all, and practical tips on interviewing, networking, and dressing for success. And she is the author of Baby Steps, The Path from Motherhood to Career. Diane is a therapist and life coach in New Jersey. Her clinical experience includes treating patients with different forms of mental illness, physical and emotional abuse, and relationship issues. Lang is also an adjunct in psychology at Montclair State University. Her college work includes mentoring students for individual career counseling and personal issue advisement. As an expert in her fields of therapy, Lang has been featured in the Daily Record, Family Circle, Family Magazine, Working Mother Magazine, and Cookie Magazine. Seen on New Jersey 12 TV, Good Day Connecticut, CBS TV, Style Connecticut, the Viera Network, and the national television program Fox and Friends. She has also participated in a reality-based internet show, OurPrisoner.com, hosted Generation X Tenet, and appeared in various educational videos, including Columbia Books. Lang has an MA in counseling and a BA in liberal arts from the New York Institute of Technology. Diane has her positive psychology coaching certificate from Whole Being Institute. Diane's latest book is Creating Balance and Finding Happiness. Today we talked about how moods and emotions are contagious, and her suggestion, clients doing sort of an emotional detox, or just if you can't break up with people or jobs in your life, how to take yourself maybe a little bit away from it. Don't spend as much time with the person that drains you. We talked about another option with when you're surrounded by toxic people is to send them love. And some people see it as a white light, but sending positive energy or love, you're keeping yourself calm and you're keeping your power. And how to keep your power right now, though you may feel powerless, how to control what we can't control, how to surrender and accept the situation that we're all going through right now. There's so many nuggets and so many tidbits. I am so excited to welcome Diane Lane to the show today.
Hi, how are you, Linda? Thank you for having me.
I'm doing so good. I'm considering everything that's going on. How about you?
I know, yeah. It's been a crazy, few months for us. I think it's like 3 months in lockdown now in the New York, New Jersey area. So yeah, it's been crazy. Definitely has been.
Yeah, I mean, I know you guys have really seen the brunt of most of it as far as, oh my gosh, like being locked down a pretty long time, and now the protests.
Yeah, I have to say New Jersey has been really peaceful. We have not had many issues, thank God. Everybody's protesting, everybody's for, equal rights and Black Lives Matter, but there hasn't been any violent, but New York City got hit really hard, and so did Philly. So the tri-state area definitely did, but it's starting to calm down. They opened New York on Monday for non-essential workers. So the transit's up and people going back, and construction. They're not fully open, but a lot of the non-essential workers went back. So starting to get a little sense of normalcy, which we have not had here in a very long time.
I know everybody keeps saying like the new normal.
I know.
Speak to that a little bit.
You know, it's really even hard to say what the new normal will be because it's so different every day. Like I was just saying to you before we started, New Jersey just opened up 20 minutes ago. I mean, literally Phil Murphy, our governor, just opened it. I mean, 20 minutes ago. So things are changing, you know, every week, every day, depending where you are. And then when COVID started changing, then, you know, the whole thing happened with George Floyd, which is horrible, but then all the protests, all the violence, the curfews. So there's been so much change. And to think about what the new normal will be is so hard because, you know, is there going to be a second wave of COVID? That's a fear. And what will that look like? What will school or colleges look like? Because they're still not sure how they're going to run that because of a second wave. Then November is the election. And then on top of that, once all of the protesting and COVID is gone, you know, the next thing they're going to talk about is the economy, because that's been hit so hard due to COVID and isolation and lockdown. So really, instead of, you know, for me, instead of always going, okay, what's the new norm going to look like? I think it's more about finding peace in uncertain times, being able to deal with uncertainty and being able to embrace change. Because even when this is all over, let's say we're in May 2021, a year from now, COVID's way behind us. We have a new president, everything's different. We're still always going to have change, right? You know, it's the only constant in the world is change. Life is a roller coaster ride. We're going to have ups and downs no matter what's going on, you know, externally and internally. You know, we're just changing even physically, right? You know, I always joke, but I just, you know, I'm 50 and God, just the natural changes we go through, perimenopause, menopause, you know, our kids with puberty, you know, everybody's always changing. So if we can embrace change and learn to be able to find some peace and calm in uncertainty, then we can kind of handle whatever gets thrown our way, because who knows? You know, I'm hoping that everything calms down and we don't have a second wave, but you don't know. So we're going to have to deal with the I don't know and get comfortable there.
What are some of your tips on coping with uncertainty? Because I feel like a lot of us now are afraid to trust that the riots are ending, or the, you know, the protesting, and that COVID is over. And I think people are kind of afraid to just trust that everything's going to be more secure again. They think
Right.
the other shoe is going to drop. What are some tips for everybody out there to cope with uncertainty and deal with it so that you yourself feel you have a little control over it?
Well, you know, just one way to look at it is, you know, when any situation happens, and I'm just going to use COVID as an example because we just opened up, so it's fresh on my mind, and the second wave is still all over the news. And with schools literally going back, you know, they're starting college early now, and my daughter's a senior in high school going to college, so it's fresh on my mind. When we talk about any situation, example COVID, there's two different stories. And both stories about the situation are completely true. But it really varies what you focus on. And unfortunately, as human beings, we have a negative bias and we tend to look towards the negative. We feel comfortable in the negative. And then society promotes the negative. Just look at, you know, the media, whether, you know, you're watching on TV or social media, you know, it's so negative. So we have that negative bias. So when we see a situation, we tend to look at the negative story. But let me just show you an example. So COVID-19 hit, let's say we're in March or April, just using as an example. We have two stories. So I can either think this, wow, oh my God, COVID-19 happened. This is horrible. There's so many deaths. We're all in isolation. Will we have, you know, be able to go out again? This is horrible. I'm so scared. That would be completely true, right? It was horrible. People were dying. It's a terrible illness. It was scary. Absolutely, 100% true. But on the other side of the story is, oh my God, you know, this is horrible, but I can't believe what the frontline workers are doing, what heroes. And I can't believe how many nurses and doctors flew in from everywhere else in the United States just to help us here in New York and New Jersey, and how many stores stayed open, and how many people participated to helping people who had autoimmune illnesses or seniors. And wow, the whole world has shifted into kindness. Both stories were true, 100% true, but it's what do you choose to look at? Which story do you choose? And we create stories in our head based on our past, on our fears, and that's normal, but you have a choice. So in any situation, whether it's global like this one, or it's personal, it could be just something personal you're going through, a breakup, a divorce, menopause like me, what I know, like just not so happy about that. But literally there is always two sides, and you want to think about what are both sides, and then which one do you want to choose? Because when you choose to focus on the positive, well, that's going to shift it. I mean, even in the protest, right? We're seeing a lot of protest and rioting, but in the middle of it, we're seeing so many cops kneeling down on the floor. We're seeing so many people come together and have peaceful protests, and we're seeing a shift. So again, do you focus on the riots, the people who are horrible and making it worse than it needs to be? Because the people who really going out there on the other side are the ones who just want change and want us to have a better world where we're all equal. You choose the story, but there's always two sides. And sometimes you got to sit down and really think, or even write it out. What are the two stories for my situation right now? And the other thing to remind yourself through that is, even if you're stuck focusing a little bit on the negative more, and again, that's very normal. We have a negative bias. It's inherited. We all have that. Even if you do, one of the things you can remind yourself of, and again, this is a fact, everything's temporary. So even if right now COVID is right in your face, right, or protest or riots are in your face, or your economy, your loss of your business, whatever it is you're going through, it is completely temporary. And we forget to remind ourselves that. And when we have so much stress that it turns into anxiety, we have that rumination, right? That's always going. And for a lot of us, it's anticipatory anxiety. Oh my God, what's going to happen? What if I have no control? My lack of, I feel helpless, hopeless. And that ruminates, and it affects our sleeping, our eating, our daily functioning. But if we remind ourselves that, oh my God, this is temporary, and know that it's temporary. And if you look in everything in your life, even your worst case scenarios, like for me, I had, 7 years ago, I couldn't even swallow. I had 3rd-degree burns in my throat. It took me over a year to be able to eat a meal. That's a long time. But now when I look back in hindsight, I'm like, wow, that seems like it was so long ago. And even though I still have to deal with it, I have a really weird illness. It's called LPR. And the best way to describe it is, how people have Barrett's esophagus? It's because they burned their esophagus. For now, I have it in my throat, which is even worse than your esophagus, because burning your throat, it can't handle any burns or acid. So it formed 3rd-degree burns on my throat, where my throat was closed shut from the burns. Oh, and then on top of the burns, you got all this postnasal drip because it was trying to heal it. So I couldn't swallow. Literally, I lost 28 pounds in 2 months. I couldn't even swallow water. It was horrible. And when I look back now, I'm like, oh my God, that was horrible, but it almost seems like it was even longer. And in the middle of it, it's hard to go, this is temporary. But even a situation like that, it is temporary. I work with clients who have traumatic brain injury and spinal injury. And yeah, for a few months to a few years, it could feel like it's never going to end. But in hindsight, when you look back, it gives you a lot of information to know everything, no matter how bad or good, is completely temporary. And also to notice you have survived it. I survived something that was way worse than the coronavirus. Not eating for a year really was way scarier. This was annoying, coronavirus. It was scary, but that was a worse situation. And just reminding myself. And one of my clients said to me, who had a stroke many, many years ago, probably 15, 16 years ago, she goes, this COVID is horrible, but it's still not as bad as what I went through. And if I could survive that, I can survive anything. And when you remember what you've been through, how it was temporary and how you've shifted and survived and thrived and all the growth you got, you realize this too, like you said, will pass. But it's reminding yourself, because when you're in it, you can't see it. Like already 20 minutes ago, we now are open. I'm already kind of forgetting. I'm like, oh, I could breathe again. And you're already forgetting that 3 months ago, you were stuck in and you didn't know what was going to happen. So we heal quickly. We move past things quickly. As Americans, like you see a celebrity, they do something wrong, they have a breakup, everybody doesn't like them. 3 months later, they're in a movie. We forget, we do. It's who we are as humans, and that's
so
good.
True.
It allows us to move forward. So do a few of those things. Check into what are the two stories. Remember that it's temporary. Look back on all the major transitions, changes, crisis that you've been through. Look at how you've been through it. Look how you survived and thrived. Use that hindsight to help you in today's world or situation. And again, it's so different the norm for everybody. Because for a lot of people, it's economy issues. They lost their businesses. They haven't worked in 3 months. It could be that issue. It doesn't even have to be, COVID or the protesting. It could be literally, oh my God, the economy, and what that's happened. Or for a lot of people, I know a lot of clients who during these 3 months realized their marriage doesn't work because now they were put to the test. And you're seeing some people who realize they want a divorce or breakup. I mean, there could be a lot of personal stuff going on from this. The loneliness, if you lived alone for 3 months, thinking about, there's so much. So really use your past in a good way. You don't want to live in your past, but you want to learn from it. What can you gain from it? It's a teachable, learnable moment and for growth. There's just a few ways to kind of move past the change. And just a really funny tip I always love, we fear everything. We don't like change. If I ask people, do they like change? Some will say, well, just positive change. Others would be like, I don't care. I just don't want any change. But 90% of what we fear never, ever happens. 90%. And it's amazing because even with COVID, we can see now with the results, it's something like 99% of people did not get it bad.
Right.
Most people didn't, but yet people were so fearful. And again, a lot of it's the media, what we watch, what we digest, reminding ourselves it's temporary, getting caught in the anxiety. So look at it. So next time, one other funny thing that we should think about, it's a funny stat when you think about it. None of us like change. Everybody fights change. They'll do anything to avoid it. And even when I say, does anybody like change? I get a few people say I like positive change, but a majority like, I don't want any change. I'll just stay here in my comfort zone. It's way better. But the truth is 90% of what we fear never happens. That's a huge statistic, 90%. And it's true. Like when we think of COVID-19, all of us went through a real panic time. But the truth is something like CDC said, something like 98 or 99% of us won't even get it that bad, if we even get it. But yet we panicked. And, even the ones who never were near anybody and who were young and didn't have, autoimmune illnesses, it's because we have such fear. And when you think of that number, 90%, I know for me and some of my clients go, that's pretty funny because 90% really doesn't. And when you look back of everything you fear, like how many times you have to go to a doctor and dentist and get like a procedure and you're so scared and then you come out and go, oh, that wasn't that bad. Like we put all this time into it. So, just remembering that along with everything's temporary, remembering that 90% of what you fear doesn't happen anyway. So, if we can embrace change a little, remember that it's always going to be there. And instead of avoiding it, running it, being in denial of it, embrace it, lean into the change. Because the more we avoid it, if we wait for change until we're forced into it, it's a way worse situation. When we take over and go, okay, change is going to happen, whether it's maybe you're thinking, I know I'm losing my job in 6 months or going out of business. You can wait to the 6 months and then start looking for a job, or you can take immediate control. And no, I have 6 months and start looking today. But if you wait the 6 months, it's going to feel a lot worse. But if you take control and go, okay, what can I do? What kind of action can I take to move forward? What can I take to make this situation better? What can I learn from it? Then you kind of move forward. And fear we'll still feel it. Don't get me wrong. You're going to feel it, but you won't let it stop you. And that's way different.
Right. Way different. I truly believe leaning into the fear and facing it head on, going through the eye of the storm, so to speak.
Right.
I really found, other than people being sick and my, my heart definitely and prayers are with everyone out there that maybe lost a loved one, but just knowing that you are here, what is the best that you can make out of the situation? Assess it.
Right.
What do you have? What can you do right now to move forward? And what's the best scenario? And we did all kinds of things. We pivoted so much. We had
Yep.
my gym had to close. That's not ideal when you're a brick and
Right.
mortar store. And we did all of our workouts on Zoom so we could hear each other and so we could see each other and connect. And we had, so much more connection than we usually
Right.
do in person. And
Wow.
we looked forward to it. And so that was really cool. The community, I had more people showing up online than I do in the studio. And then I think the other thing that was neat was I did a Friday night out with Elaine Lane, Dr. Lori Shimmick, Amberly Lago. So they came on. I only asked them for 10 minutes each. They came on and supported each other in the community for an hour and a half.
Wow.
And
Yeah, that's awesome.
so beautiful, so beautiful. So another way that we pivoted, I just kept thinking, what can I do for everybody out there? They've been so great. And nothing that you do is too small. Sometimes the voice in your head is like, oh,
Sure.
that won't work. Oh, nobody will like that. Oh, nobody will come. Oh, but like, say a new thing to yourself. What do they need? What do people need right now? What do I need right now? And how can I show up differently to bring that to people? And so I thought, wow, I have always wanted to do a cooking class where everybody had their own kitchen.
Oh, well, there you go. That worked.
And so I was like, I'm going to send them the recipe. I'm going to tell them where to get the ingredients. And we're going to have a healthy cooking class on Zoom. It was so fun.
That went well, right?
It went so well.
See, now that's the silver lining. And I always tell people that in navigating your new norm, look at the silver lining, because every situation has a silver lining. I mean, you just gave us a few silver linings, even if the only silver lining was you learn new technology, because learning is really a factor of happiness. So the more you learn, the more you grow, the happier you are, the more variety you get in your life. So even if it's just the growth you got, the learning that you got, that's worth it. But so many people have formed new habits through this whole thing. They realized they could survive without certain relationships that weren't healthy to begin with. They started making those changes. A lot of people quit smoking and things that were bad for them just because they didn't want to get sick. So, I mean, there's so much good. I mean, just the environment, look how it cleared up. I mean, I know for me in Jersey, one of the best things is like, oh my God, we haven't really had any traffic. Nobody's on the road, and that's great for the environment. So, I mean, there are silver linings. And now that you're starting to go into the next chapter or your new norm, as we talked about, or the next phase, it's thinking about what was the silver lining for you in the last 2 to 3 months, depending how long you were locked down. Or even some people like, oh my God, I lost my job. And once the fear subsided, they're like, I hated that job. I can now collect unemployment and pursue my dream job, redo my resume, go back and get my certification and whatever I need so I can do what I want. You know how many people 9/11 here in the New York area, one of the big things that happened after 9/11, and I lived in New York at the time, was a lot of people quit their jobs and became teachers and social workers because they realized, I really want to help people. And when we look at the silver lining, because again, it's so hard to think what would be a silver lining in 9/11. It was horrible. It was horrific. Just like, what's going on now. You can see it. Not only did everybody come together, but so many people left their jobs and started careers that had so much meaning and purpose and were able to help other people. That's amazing. Whether they became social workers, counselors, teachers, firemen, whatever it was, they did that. So there's always a silver lining, and there's always growth from every experience, negative or positive. So you really, and sometimes the most negative, situations that seem negative at the time end up being the best. And a lot of situations that you planned and you thought would be perfect don't work out. So you never know what's going to happen. So be open-minded, be flexible. Don't set these expectations. It has to be this way. Whatever the situation is, everything has to look a certain way. You want to be flexible because that allows for more room for growth, for different things that can show up, opportunities, possibilities that you never even planned for or thought about. And here they are, and they might be really good. I mean, I didn't know how to use Zoom before this. And, I was scared when I first had to do my first webinar. I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And it was the most simple thing. Again, there was that fear. Will I be able to do this? Will I handle it? Will I like it? And here we are. It was so easy and done. And I'm like, oh, I could do technology now. Like you gain that accomplishment and pride, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be Zoom, whatever you did. And that's really important. And a lot of people have switched out of social media. They're doing old school. They're hiking, they're biking, they're reading books. I mean, there's a lot of great things that came out of this, and just the quality time with your family, that connection, those are important too. So, really find your silver lining. And something else you said that's so important is ask yourself, how can I be in service of others? Or how can I be of service to others? We get so wrapped up in our own stress, pain, anxiety, misery that we can't see outside of ourselves. And we get stuck there. And then we get more miserable because it's rumination and we're stuck. When we look outside of ourselves and help others, we get a boost of happiness, because every time we do a random act of kindness, we get a boost of happiness. The person you do it for gets a boost of happiness, and it boosts your self-esteem. And kindness is a positive emotion. So if you can look outside yourself and get out of your own head, you'll get out of a lot of your fear and anxiety because you won't be focused in on it. So help others. I mean, I don't know what happened. Lost my voice there for a second, but really just went out. Really help others. It's not even just, what we could do for society and how we could change society if everybody just did one act of kindness. It'll help you. It'll help your happiness, your self-esteem. So, and it doesn't have to cost you anything. It could be a text, it could be holding the door open for someone. It could be a compliment. It could be anything. It just has to be that simple. You don't even have to plan for it. You'll find something during the day to be of service, but do it. Definitely do it. It's huge for all of us.
And what you said about it's simple, I think, at first when I was thinking of the ideas to pivot, and let me just say, you have to be open. You have to open yourself up to the idea of pivoting and letting go of everything that you like. I had to throw, I joined a course and I had to throw it out the window because it wasn't working for the time we were in. So I'm like, I'll go back to it later. But you have to be open to the change. Like, I think just when I invited Elaine Lane and Dr. Lori Shimmick and Amberly Lago on, these were my dream guests that I wanted to have at my grand opening 1 year ago. But because we had COVID, I got to have them that day.
Yes.
And it was better. It was like every time I go back to that night, everybody said it was their best Friday night in ever. I glow. I listened to them on that. They were on the podcast. So I listened and I smile, like just feeling the warmth of the whole thing. And so I think, what you said about being simple, you might think your idea is too simple, but sometimes we think it's in the complicated and the different. But sometimes it's really just in the simplicity of your idea and running with it and not being like, who am I to do this? What are people going to think? Is it going to work? Who's going to come? Like, just do it. And then you're going to be like glowing like I did.
No, it's true. We put in all of this like expectation, like even with gratitude, it has to be something huge. You just want to be grateful for the little things. Maybe it's that it started off raining and the sun came out. Maybe somebody brought you just a cup of coffee and it just happened to be a great cup of coffee, and the same with kindness. Just getting a compliment, like, when you're like out, you're shopping, whatever, food shopping, the store, and someone just goes, oh, I love your hair, or I love the color, or I love your eyes, anything simple, it cheers up your whole day. It's those little things that really make a difference and that we don't do enough of. And again, a lot of times it's because we're so fast paced, we're type A, we don't even think about it. So it's being a little bit more mindful of, we're all connected and these little things make a difference. So every day, do one thing that's of service to others, whether it's friend, family, or a complete stranger. I make my college students do it. They have a assignment called Random Act of Kindness. Actually, I think I switched it to Pay It Forward assignment. And for 1 week, they have to do 2 random acts of kindness a day, one for somebody they know and one for a complete stranger. And the reason is because you'll be happier at the end. And the other part is I want them to step outside their comfort zone, because again, when we're fearful, we want to stay in our comfort zones. We're like, I'm not changing. This is my little spot. Looks good here. Weather's good. I'm staying. But every time you step outside your comfort zone, you grow, you expand, and it shifts you. Absolutely. Even the littlest things, trying a new food, reading a book you would never read, talking to someone you would never talk to if you're shy. Every time you do that, you shift. And that makes fear really less scary because you're like, oh, I'm doing something different every day. And it gives us a boost to happiness. So if you could do something different every day that takes you outside your comfort zone and also makes you kind to the world, however you choose it, it's just a win-win for everybody. And they're free and they're easy and they're not going to change your schedule. That's the best part. You can do it while you're food shopping. You can text a friend, send an email. Doesn't matter what it is. It's that easy. So no excuses anymore. We all have to just be kinder. And I think with the rioting and the protesting, the one thing we should get out of this is that we need to be kinder to each other.
Right.
Especially, in today's day and age,
Just
Black Lives Matter should really make us realize.
And sympathetic and
and kind.
Stop just thinking, like, I think what affects one affects us all, and stop thinking that, oh, that's over in whatever country. That doesn't affect me, so I don't have to worry about it. I think we need to realize that whatever affects humanity affects us all. And so,
absolutely.
And like you said, being kind, you don't realize, like, I remember one day I just did the simplest thing. I gave a mug to a friend with a saying that I just thought was, cute, and they'd like it. They started bawling, crying. And I think really it was because nobody had done anything kind for them in a while. And that just really touched their heart. And so you don't really know where people are at because people don't always wear their feelings on their sleeve. But I think leading with kindness and leading with love is the way to lead.
Right. I think you can't go wrong. And again, they're all positive emotions. And when we have a daily diet of positive emotions or a daily dose of them, like joy, love, hope, inspiration, awe and wonderment, pride, curiosity, interest, when we have a daily diet of them, we actually live up to 7 years longer, healthier, and happier. So every time you do a positive emotion, it balances out the negative emotions. And we have plenty of negative in today's world. We don't need any more of that. So let's balance it out. And you can get these positive emotions by giving or receiving. So, if you do acts of kindness today, if you do your gratitude or prayer, if you're mindful, you've already gotten a few. And love, we can easily give and receive, even if it's with a pet, even if you live alone and you have a dog or a cat. We have so many ways to do it. And just today in nature, it's summer. So going outside and seeing the colors of the flowers, that right there is beauty. The clouds, even a thunderstorm, I think it's so cool. Or the lightning bugs were finally out the other day. Anything like that is awe and wonderment. So really just, kind of cultivating as many positive emotions will shift everything for you as well. It really helps balance it out. So definitely.
Right. I think going out in nature just gives you faith that it's going to be okay, because it seems okay. Like it seems fine. Like it wasn't disturbed, Well,
it is funny because that's actually the truth. Like if Earth has had enough, it would probably just throw us off and still go on like everything was fine. The planet will remain. We as humans need to take care of each other. Mother Nature knows what it's doing, obviously, right? Just look at it. And it's true, during COVID, everybody would say their mood was different on nice days. Even if it was a little cool, a little cold out, you could go outside, your whole mood would shift. Just like people have seasonal affective disorder in the winter. The shorter days, the colder, it gets dark. The more we're outside in nature, the more mindfulness. And mindfulness is just being awake and aware to everything around you and what's going on in your head. And when you're out in nature, you get that peacefulness, you get the faith, and you also get the sun, which is the vitamin D, which, is great because it's great for your immune system and it's also great for your moods. So, there's so many benefits, and we do need mindfulness. Mindfulness is so important with change and uncertainty because mindfulness takes us to the here and now. Because when we're stressed out, we're either in the past, thinking about the past baggage, our regrets, what we should have done, and we're taking that baggage with us, or we're in the future where we have anticipatory anxiety. But when we're here in the moment, everything's pretty good. So the more that you stay in your conscious mind, the happier you are, the more productive and the more creative you are. So with people who are saying, oh my God, but I got to work from home, my kids are home with school, it's better for you. Take those mindfulness breaks. Take 10 minutes to go outside nature. I mean, the best way to get mindfulness is a walk. You don't have to run. You don't have to jog. You don't have to meditate. Just go for a walk, because meditation is the intentional practice of mindfulness, just like yoga or exercise. Just go for a walk, and everybody can walk. And we're seeing a lot of that. Take your dog, they'll, whatever you want to do, your kids, just go out there. Even if it's just 15 minutes, get out in nature, get that vitamin D, improve your moods, get the fresh air, close your eyes, pay attention using your senses. What do you see? What do you hear? What do you smell? What do you touch? All of that's mindfulness. So it's really simple to get. And again, that reduces our anxiety. It lowers our stress hormone, cortisol. It reduces chronic pain. I mean, again, so many benefits, all for free, and doesn't need a lot of time, but it does need consistency. We do need to be mindful and do mindfulness techniques pretty regularly, just so we're more in the moment. And that will help for any kind of future change we have to deal with.
Yeah. And basically the benefit of slowing down, because we've had to slow down. And how many times have we said, I wish I could slow down a little bit? You got the gift of that. So take advantage of it as long as you can, because pretty soon we're going to be slamming back at it again. And hopefully you remember to still take those breaks. But I also want to speak to relationships, because I think probably during this time, you either strengthened your relationship or it got worse. And what does a person do if they're stuck home or they're in this toxic relationship? How can they still cultivate happiness regardless of COVID or a toxic relationship?
Well, happiness is an inside job. There's no doubt about it. But when you are surrounded by toxic people, it definitely brings you down. Negativity is contagious. So there is a lot of truth to that. So you want to think about, and I've said to a lot of my clients, I want you to reevaluate in these last few months that you couldn't see people. Really reevaluate any relationships, because any relationship could be toxic. It doesn't have to be your partner or your husband or wife. It could be a friend. It could be a family member. It could be a cousin. It could be an employee or, a neighbor. It doesn't matter. Really think about this. And I always say this to people, think about the 5 or 6 people you spend the most time with, a handful of people, and look at them and say, do they drain you or do they lift you up? And that's a really important question, because if, let's say, just you and I went to grab coffee at Starbucks, we just went out for coffee, nothing big, but we've been friends forever. Just by going, having coffee, laughing, chatting, smiling for an hour, I'm going to leave and I'm going to feel good because we had a good time. If I'm with somebody who's toxic, I feel it instantly. And that's the first sign. When people say, what's toxic? Because I can give some generic of what toxic is. Somebody who's always a victim, somebody who's always, why me? Very selfish, self-absorbed, narcissistic, judgmental, harsh, critical. I mean, those are toxic people. But what's toxic for me might not be toxic for you. It's different for everybody. So the best way to determine what's toxic for you is, how do they make you feel? We hold stress, anxiety, anger, all of those emotions on our body. That's why they call it the pain body. You feel everything. And when you're around somebody who's toxic, even if you're in avoidance and denial in your head and you push it out or preoccupy, your body's fully aware. Like, I still remember I had a friend years ago, we're no longer friends, who was really toxic for me. And even if I just got a text, I would feel it in my stomach. My stomach would turn like someone's wringing a washcloth instantly. And that was a sign for me that this relationship's just not healthy for me. And that's a sign to get out. So you want to think about, now that we're all coming out, because Jersey was the last place, I think, besides New York City, to come out of COVID and, isolation. But even if you're slowly doing it, because some people are still scared, you have low immune, or, also, of course, if you're around people who have it and you have to be protective, those kind of things. Want to think about, what action steps do you want to take to have a healthy relationship? And for a lot of people, it's changing yourself before you actually make the change. Being confident enough to know that you don't want this and what you do want. So you want to think about that before you even make the change and, break up with the person or set up boundaries and limitations with them, however you choose to do it. Think to yourself, how do they make you feel? Is it one certain area about the person? Like, it just might be, this person doesn't normally bother me. They're only toxic when we discuss politics or religion, and I just got to stay away from that subject. Or is this someone who constantly makes me feel worse about myself? When I leave, I realize I haven't been the person I want to be. I feel like I'm walking on eggshells around them, those kind of things. If that's happening, then you want to think about, what do I need to change about myself? Why do I put myself in these relationships? Why did I stay so long? What's kept me here? Because there's a need being met, even if it's a negative need. There's something being met that kept you in that toxic relationship. And you have to make those changes, because if not, you'll get rid of that person. But the next relationship, whether it's friend or spouse or whatever, is going to look the same. Might have a different color hair, different height, different name, but they're going to treat you the same way. So until you change how you treat yourself and your negative self-talk, you want to. So you want to think about, look at those people who are close to you and think about it. You know, again, do they always make me feel bad? Is it a certain topic? Or is a person just recently been toxic because they're going through something? Because sometimes relationships change because the person, you know, like I have a client right now who had a really great friend for years, and now the friend's going through a divorce, and she's become really toxic through the divorce. And, you know, for the first 6 months to a year, she let it slide. It's now like 3 years later. And she's like, I can't do this anymore. And I'm like, you don't have to. You know, like sometimes we look at a whole relationship, go, but it was great for 20 years, but it hasn't been good in 3. And that's okay. Relationships shift, and that's okay too. And, you know, not punishing yourself because it didn't work out, realizing that maybe you've grown apart. Even if the relationship wasn't toxic, we do grow apart, and that's not bad at all. It's just different, and that's okay too. You know, I was just reading, and it was funny that you said divorce. I don't know if you follow Rachel Hollis. She's a big life, life stuff. And she just wrote this morning that she's getting divorced. And
that's big news to me.
Yeah. So I'm sorry to break it, but I saw it on Instagram this morning.
What?
And yep. And I realized this, for a lot of people, again, I've had clients going through this, the 3 months or 2 months. If your relationship wasn't that great to begin with, it was definitely going to challenge it, because you're now spending 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in a very stressful time. And that brings out the worst in people. So it either makes it stronger or it doesn't. But again, looking at it as a bonus, because you figured it out now, and that allows you to make the changes so you can find the relationship that works for you. But you first need to fix the relationship with yourself. That's always first.
No judgment here. Just sorry to hear it. Yeah.
I know. I was kind of like, no, they've been together forever. But you know what? I'm sure they will be friends, because they already were friends beforehand. So, you know, I think for a lot of people, they just realize it doesn't work. And hopefully they're one of those who can have a healthy breakup.
It's hard, like, to work together all the time, though. Like,
and they said they were going to.
You know, you said something earlier that I wanted to answer to. Something about, you know, people being together and then they're just like, it doesn't work anymore. Maybe you've been together too much and you just need to find some space. And sometimes that's all it is like, I don't want to be with my mom all the time. I don't want to be with my brother all the time. I love them, but I need my own space and my own things.
Absolutely.
And then we come together in the middle. So I think there's that end of it too.
Right. Well, that's the boundaries and limitations. It might just be, it was too much time. And yes, absolutely. My husband was an essential, thank God. Because I don't think I could have handled that. I would have been like, please just go back to work. Because that's hard.
That's an adjustment too, though. Like, I think marriage is phases. Like I've been married 25 years to my husband.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thanks. I think it's phases. So I think sometimes you could be like in a bad phase, and then all of a sudden, like, you work on it, it gets better, you grow. Not all marriages are gonna go through all the phases, because you might be like, you know, but I think, like, when we retire, that'll be a phase, and I'll have to adjust, like I did during COVID, and find, like, okay, I don't want to be glued to the hip all the time. I don't want to ride with you on every engineering call. I still want to have my space and come together, but, like, you know.
You know, retirement does challenge couples a lot. There are people who don't make it through the retirement phase because, again, there's now a whole new dynamic and you're spending so much time together. And one of the things I always say to couples is, you know, even though you're retired and you're both home, you can have separate interests. You don't have to do everything together. And it's knowing some couples want to. And it's knowing your personality too. Like, what do you need? Like, I'm like that. Like, I need my friends. I need to go out. I can't just be with my husband. That would drive me insane. It's just me. That's who I am. So it's knowing yourself and knowing what you want. And that's why the relationship with yourself has to be the most important, because then you would know. You'd say, yeah, he's driving me insane. But yeah, we've been home 3 months, day and night. Of course you would be. Maybe you just need the boundaries and limitations and you need to separate. That's fine. But sometimes you also realize most people who are having that question now realize the relationship wasn't working even before COVID. This just brought it to the surface. So, it's definitely, those are people who've already had a lot of marriage problems. And one thing you brought up is so true. In a marriage, it's always an up and down. It's sometimes one person almost feels more in love than the other. That goes back and forth. One time someone's going through a bad and the other one isn't, or they're ill. So there's always back and forth. It's never always on equal ground. And yeah,
Right.
absolutely. I'm worried when couples have been together and they've never had a fight. Then I wonder, like, okay, what's going on? Because that means somebody's not communicating. You're two different people. You're not going to agree on everything. That's impossible. So
Right.
of course there's going to be disagreements and stuff, but it's knowing what you want and is it working for you and why it's not working. Is it fixable or is it not fixable? And it's okay either way.
Caring about what the other one likes. And, like, we don't all like the same things, but if I show some interest in what he likes because I care about him, I think
Right.
that matters to him, and vice versa. Like, we bought a kayak because I am an outdoorsy girl. I love nature. I want a kayak. I'm like a duck in the water. And so, like, I wanted to buy my own so I could just go off in the woods and be, right in my kayak and, whatever else. And
One
my
with nature.
husband, like, wants the double kayak, and I'm like, oh no, then I won't be able to go whenever I want. And I was like, okay, he wants to go with me. So we get the kayak, we strap it on the car, not correctly, and we take off, and the thing like flies off of our
No.
car. And I'm like, oh, and he goes to buy ties for it. And every ties box he opens, it's like hundreds of little twisty ties, like on every strap. And it's not the right strap. So after 3 boxes of straps and twisty ties, he's like, we are going kayaking, but we are not using this kayak. We rented the kayak. So, and then as soon as we got in the middle of the lake, he was so hangry. He wanted to go back, and he was so hungry. So I was like, oh my gosh. And so I keep saying, I want to go kayaking. When are we going to get a new rack? When are we going to learn to tie it on? And he's like,
Never.
And then I say, honey, I'm like, seriously, that is like my thing, my dream of being retired is being able to go kayak whenever I want. And so I said, let's take the dogs, let's try again. So he did buy another life preserver for other dogs. So I think we're going Saturday.
Oh, well, now you have to let me know what happens. Now I'm going to need to know. If that flies off the car, then I think he might be done. Make sure this one's strapped in.
Oh my gosh. But I think it's those things. It's the respect and the caring.
Yeah. Compromise
about your partner and what lights them up, because it isn't always the same. He loves listening to a history podcast, and learning new things about history. And he should have a history podcast. I keep telling him. And I just think like that lights him up. And so like if I don't show any interest in what my partner likes, it's gonna pull us apart. But I think being a little giving in your relationship really helps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, compromise, absolutely. You're two people joining in as one, kind of. So you need to compromise. And you both also need to have your separate space. Absolutely. It's both. And, marriage is hard work. It does take work. That's just part of the relationship. Every relationship takes work. It takes time, and it takes energy and attention. And if it's not given, somebody's not going to be happy. So yeah, you have to, give in a little and also let them have their space when they need it. So, sometimes he'll go kayaking with you. Sometimes you'll go alone and he'll just be listening to his history podcast and he'll be happy. And that's perfect. That's right. The way it's going to be.
You have to have that ebb and flow of of togetherness, and I think aloneness, like where you have some space so that you
Yes.
can breathe and being yourself equally. Like, don't you think like being able to accept the other person as he loves history podcasts, or he loves
Sure.
being an engineer, and I love teaching my fitness classes, and so
Right.
if he didn't love me being me, then he's not the right one for me.
Right. You have to be your authentic self, because if you're faking it, well, that takes a lot of energy. You're going to be exhausted, but the person's not truly loving you for you, and
Right.
that'll
Or
eventually
giving you
come
up,
out.
or punishing you for it,
Right. And you'll punish yourself for not being you. You always have to be you. Authentic, vulnerable, those are really important parts of a relationship, even friendships. So, yeah, I mean, that's why it's best to always have this great relationship with yourself where you know who you are, what you want. That's really important, because that'll lead you in the direction of the right relationships. If you're doing it for the wrong reasons, or you're looking for acceptance and approval, people pleaser, it's going to not get you where you want to go. And eventually you're going to be happy, or you're going to put yourself in relationships that are toxic. Even if they don't feel like it at first, they eventually will become it, and that'll drain you. And that's not what we want. So really important. And during this time, I think everybody had enough time to reevaluate and figure out what character traits, what habits, patterns didn't work pre-COVID-19. What do they want to take with them? And what new changes do they want to make for their next chapter? Because that's what it is. It's a new chapter now happening, going back, your new norm, your next phase. So what parts of your old life do you want to take with you? Like, yeah, we're going to go back to normal, but I hope we don't go exactly back. I don't want it that we're that fast paced, that we're always having to multitask and we're not enjoying life. Let's not do that. We have a choice right now to make that decision, whether it means you only go into work 2 or 3 times and you work from home 2 times a week. It could be that simple, whether it's giving yourself mindfulness and taking 15 minutes a day for self-care that you've learned, whether it's going out in nature more often than you did because you were stuck in an office, and maybe you're going outside with your computer and sitting on the deck. But take what you've learned from this, so we don't just go back. We don't want to just go back. If that's what we do, then COVID was for nothing. All the protests and the riots were for nothing. We need to change. So, and that's okay. But making sure you do that. People get so excited to go back to the norm because it gives them that sense of security and normalcy, which I get. But you don't want to do that, because you probably weren't that happy beforehand with the way things were. If you were always searching for money, looking for approval, stuck in traffic, I'm sure there's things you could do to make life better. If you didn't and life was perfect, well, then go back to your normal. But I haven't met that person yet. I just haven't. And I
And
don't know if I ever will.
right.
So,
And speaking to that people pleasing part, like being a person that's reforming the people pleasing ways, which
yeah,
is something you have to steadily work on, because I think women have been
absolutely.
taught to people please a lot and
Yes.
nurture and be the caretaker and the giver. I think just knowing that the more you people please, the less you know who you are, and the less you know what you want, and the less you, because
Yep.
you're on somebody else's agenda and you have no control over that. Like, you only really have control over you and working on you and validating yourself, instead of always seeking this external validation, or validation that's not within yourself and it's within someone else. You're always going to find yourself disappointed.
Absolutely. I mean, even if you get that, positive reinforcement for others, which is great, and we should all give it, it's temporary. You have to have it within. So, your negative download, whatever how you talk to yourself is always going to win. So even if you're at work and your boss gives you this glowing review and you get a raise, that might make you feel good for a week. But the next time you make a mistake at work, or you're running late, or the meeting didn't go as planned, you're going to go right back to that negative loop. And those are the things that we need to change, the inside. Those are the things we have the ability, right? We can only control ourselves, how we react and respond, but we can also control how we talk to ourselves and what we digest, who we spend time with, what media we let in, what we eat. We have control over a lot of that, all of it. So really making sure you make those changes, especially now that we do have this time to reevaluate and make a decision. What do I want that's not it, post-COVID to look like? I don't know where pro came from. Post-COVID, what do I want it to look like? What is my next chapter? And taking the time to do it. And we all need to do it no matter what, because we could always be better than we are, not anybody else. Don't compare yourself to anybody else, but I know for me, I always want to be better than where I was yesterday. And so even if you thought life was really good beforehand and it will be really good again, what changes can you make so it's even better? And that's, that's something you could always ask yourself.
And I love so much what you said earlier about if you were in a relationship that's narcissistic, or it's, you're a codependent of some sort, or a people pleaser, or you're just having issues. If you don't focus on changing what got you there in the first place, you will end up back in the same.
Absolutely.
It'll be a different pair of pants, but the same problem. So I think taking some responsibility for ourselves and for where we're at, and taking control and taking charge, and not always blaming somebody or putting that off on someone else, but
right.
us being in charge is the way to go.
Owning it.
Yeah.
You have to take responsibility. You can't change until you take responsibility for your actions.
Right.
There's no way around it. So you have to.
What you're allowing or tolerating, right?
Yep. Which is your actions. You're letting them do it. You're staying in the relationship. Nothing can change until you make the decision of what you want to change, what's not working, and be self-aware of it. Self-awareness is the first key, and then be willing to change. Be open to being, even if it's painful, because it will. Change can be painful. Good at the end, the big picture, but it can be painful on the process. So, and that's okay. And forgive yourself for any of those mistakes that you made along the way. You're learning. We all are. So, and that's okay. You know what I mean? I know I keep saying that's okay, but I want people to know that. I don't want people judging themselves, because we're our worst critic. We're the harshest to ourselves. We make one little mistake, and if our best friend made it, we'd be like, oh, no big deal, and really mean it. But we make it, we're like, oh, it's the end of the world.
The end of the world.
Right. So, just be gentle with yourself, but really self-awareness is key. It is.
I love it. And how many end of the worlds have you had? I've had quite a few end of the world moments that were not the end of the world.
I mean, just remember 2000. Remember when the world was going to end, when we turned 2000? I still remember that. I mean, like, oh my God, it's going to end. It's 2000. Then there was the Mayan calendar, I mean, there's always natural disasters, there's always been something. SARS, HIV, I remember that. People would think it was the end of the world. We're still here. So let's make the best of it.
Oh, so good. And I still have my Y2K kerosene heater.
See, there's the silver lining. You got a kerosene heater out of it. That's funny.
So whenever our heat goes out, we're good.
We have a generator. You have to over here in New York, New Jersey. We've learned the hard way. So yes, you have to.
So good.
Absolutely.
I enjoyed this conversation so much. You're so great. Where can everybody get more of you on social media?
Well, thank you so much for having me. It was so much fun, especially your story. I don't know if your husband's going to appreciate it, but I found that really funny with the kayak. So I need to know about on Saturday. But you can find me either at my website, which is dlcounseling.com. It's just my initials. On there is my email and all my social media links. I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn. So please come and join me. And I have a newsletter on Monday. It's free. It's just a happiness letter with different tips. So if you want to join up for that, you can sign up right on the front page of my website. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I have enjoyed it so much. And for everybody out there, just know this is our second take. During COVID, Zoom was overloaded, and literally I could not convert the video from our first talk. So Diane is a champion and a good sport, as well as an amazing counselor.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Good luck on Saturday. And it was a pleasure. I hope to meet you in person one day soon when you come to New York to see your kids. I remember that.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for listening. And thanks, Diane.
Bye-bye.